Welcome to the Awaken Woman podcast, where we delve into the transformational stories of inspiring people who have overcome challenges and transformed their lives. Today's guest is a powerful energy healer who is transforming lives through her intuitive gifts and deep understanding of the subconscious. Such interesting topic. Candice is passionate about helping empaths and those on their healing path to find balance, release emotional blocks, and rediscover joy. But what truly sets her apart is how she connects deeply with her client's subconscious mind to pinpoint and release trapped energy and inherited trauma. So get ready for an enlightening conversation as we discuss energy healing, repressed trauma, transformation, and living a courageous life. So I was saying to Candice before we started recording that I'm so excited about this topic because this is basically what I'm so passionate about too. And the way I connected with Candice was, as I said, divinely orchestrated. And I had the privilege and honor to also be her client and receive her beautiful intuitive gifts through energy, body code, and emotional code, which she will explain us in more detail in this episode. So welcome, Candice, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, you have such an interesting story. I know we won't have enough time to go through everything, but
Yes.
honestly, like when I connected with you just to, get to know each other a little bit better, and then I discovered all the beautiful and powerful techniques that you do as well. I was just so drawn into your story, which is, a testament of how powerful we are, and more importantly,
Mhm.
our body. So,
Yes.
can you share how your physical pain led you to discover energy healing and repressed trauma?
Absolutely. So, I think a lot of us have a lot of pain in our bodies, and we typically go to the doctor to figure that out. Why do we have pain? And so I did the same thing. I went to all the doctors. I had pain. It was in this particular pain happened to be in my foot.
Yeah.
And so I went to all the doctors, had all the tests, went into the boot for 6 weeks, did physical therapy. I did all the things,
Yeah.
and nothing touched this pain. Absolutely nothing. And so I had already been working with a naturopathic doctor for some other things. She started learning emotion code. I'd never heard of energy work before, and but I was willing to do anything. Right at that point, I was in so much pain,
Yeah.
and so she started doing emotion code and essentially was releasing trapped emotions or energy from that pain in my foot.
Mm.
And so that's really what led me into energy work, energy healing, was understanding that our bodies really are keeping the score, right?
Yeah.
They are holding all of this, information, energy, trauma, whatever you want to call it, in our physical bodies. It's in our tissues, right? It's in our muscles.
Yeah.
So that's really what led me to the energy work. And over a period of time, when I was able to really peel back a
Yeah.
lot of the energy that was, being held in my body, I got to know who I was a lot better, right? Because a lot of that energy was kind of masking who I really was.
Yeah, that's
And yeah, and then from there, once I understood my own energy a little bit better, I then began to understand that I had repressed childhood trauma.
wow.
And so
Yeah. So yeah, I'm very interested in what I was gonna say is like, what led you to be, a client of,
Mhm,
this powerful technique to then
mhm,
be like, what was that moment, like that realization for you? Okay, this is my purpose.
mm,
I'm being called to not only experience the power of energy healing and through your own healing and your own transformation and discovering your own trauma, which of course we will get into more detail, um, to then now being that healer also
yeah.
transforming people's lives.
So it took a while for me to figure out that this was what I was supposed to do. I had a corporate job that I had had for a long time, and really the progression of the work that I was doing with the energy healer and on my own. Right, because we talked about this earlier. It's an inside job. People can facilitate the process and help us along,
Yeah.
which we need, but essentially we do the hard work on the inside. And so I had been doing a lot of that and probably pushed a little bit too hard to get some answers.
Yeah.
And essentially I got the answers around the repressed childhood trauma, but it came in a little bit too fast, a little bit too quick, and that ended up putting me into some other medical issues.
Yeah.
And it was in the time frame that I was on a medical leave. Everything happens for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Um, that I started to understand that this was something I was supposed to do to help other people. So the way that I was helped through the energy healing is what I was supposed to be doing. Because the corporate job that I loved for a really long time,
Yeah.
it just didn't give me the same satisfaction as it did
Yeah.
before. And it just yeah, I needed something deeper. I needed to be able to help people in a different way.
Yeah, wow, that's usually right. Like so many stories where
Mhm.
we were following just the general, as I call it, the template of life of
Mhm.
doing a corporate life, and then when we are ready to finally face it, the universe will put us into situations where we are forced to go inwards and to
Yes.
slow down, to spend time on our own. It's easy. It's either something radical happens in our life, like we go through an
Mhm.
accident, or like an spiritual awakening, the dark night of the soul, whatever you call it. You go through
Yes.
challenges that really force you to go inwards, or you have these situations where the universe is okay, some physical manifestations in your body where you had to take time off, and then you
Mhm.
had to kind of like slow down and go inward. So now I would love you to share what was your experience with energy healing. Like if you could explain to people what
Mm.
is energy healing, and how it impacted your own inner transformation.
Yeah. It felt like a key had unlocked something within me.
Wow.
Answers that I maybe didn't know I was looking for, but that I had been looking for.
Yeah, yeah.
When we started doing the emotion code and they were the practitioner was releasing the trapped emotions from the bottom of my foot. I thought, gosh, this is the tip of the iceberg. What else do we have to release? And so I was just fascinated with the whole process, right? We talked about subconscious he or work, and that's essentially what this is you're connecting into the subconscious, and your subconscious never gives you more than you're ready to deal with, right?
Yes.
But it's the key, it's your hard drive. And so I didn't know how to unlock my hard drive before. And this energy healing essentially allowed me the key to be able to unlock my subconscious and really understand what was happening within my own body.
Yeah, and how is that process that you were able to connect with your subconscious, like through energy healing, and her like working with your food? Because of course it's like, this all sounds easy, but there is
Yeah.
way more into the practice. So how you can connect all the dots between the pain in your food, energy healing, and then uncovering all the trauma. Why was it in your food? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, all these realizations.
Yeah. So the subconscious work, we'll start with that, right? That is essentially the part of the puzzle that was missing for me. So being able to unlock that subconscious through the energy healing,
Yeah.
right? That was what I was able to do. And the energy healing essentially is the trapped emotions
Yeah.
or the programming that we have in our bodies, the inherited trauma, the inherited emotions. So when we kind of piece all of that together, I had this pain in my foot when you think about your foot, right, I always look at the, spiritual meaning of things. Your
Yeah.
feet are about moving forward,
Right.
and so because I had this pain in my foot, I wasn't moving forward, and my spiritual team or the universe was like, "Okay, we're gonna give you this information so that you can start moving forward, and you get to unlock all of these other things too."
Wow.
So, yeah, we were able to piece together, right, the energy healing through the subconscious that I had these emotions, and these other, programs and all these other things, that were really holding me back from living my life of joy, of really understanding my own self. And we talked a little bit about, courage in the beginning too. It takes a lot of courage to look at yourself in the mirror like that,
Mm.
right? It's not it's it's an interesting journey. It's not always easy. It takes a lot of courage to take that time to have that stillness, to be able to go inside, and be willing to do all of that work with the facilitation, right, from an energy healer or somebody else, that's able to help you, guide you through that process.
Yeah, and as you said, yeah, I 100% agree, and I think sometimes one of the biggest blocks for us to heal ourselves and going inwards is the shame of
Mm,
having to face all these things that have been repressed for so long,
mhm.
and it makes sense, they can be confronting. So how was that process for you? What do you think is the key part that you can also like share with the audience and anyone here in this listening to this episode? Sorry, how can they move through their own shame and their own denial to be able to go there and sit with compassion with everything that might come up through that process?
Yeah. That's that's a lot of the work, right? That's really a big piece for me. It was hard. It was hard to sit in that shame, um, even though it wasn't my fault, right? Um, but there's still shame, right? It still sits under there. The keys to me were taking my time, having the right people in my life to be able to help me. So, a community of people, some therapists, right? Other energy healers, my husband, different, friends, being able to have a community to share the um the journey with is essentially a big piece of all of that, and the willingness to go deep.
Yeah.
So, there are other people that may have receive the same information that I did, but aren't if they weren't willing to go deep and do that inner work, then they wouldn't have gotten to the same place. So yeah, just having the courage to sit with the information, and then really taking it piece by piece. I think a lot of times we think that, oh, great, we know this information and we're just going to move through the process, right? We're just going to, we talk about that spiritual bypassing, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, okay, yep, this is it. Now I mean, just move to the end of the process.
Yeah.
And you really have to take each piece with time. It's not a linear process, right? The healing process is a big old roller coaster.
Yeah.
And you just have to be ready. You have to be ready for the ride.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, definitely is it requires a lot of courage, as you said, and I feel like we are faced with the things we are meant to see and acknowledge and heal because we've gotten to that point where we are ready, where we
Yes.
have everything within ourselves to deal with it, to manage it, to
Mhm.
process it, to hold ourselves, and most importantly, knowing that we are always supported. We are always
Yes.
supported in our journey. It's all everything happening in divine timing. So that's
Mhm.
something that it has helped me in my own journey as well when I've gone through the lows of that roller coaster and the dark times and the shadow, like facing
Yeah.
my shadows and all the things that
Mhm.
I hadn't seen in the past. So
Yeah.
what was that turning point for you when you realized that your childhood trauma was affecting your physical health? What that kind of like
Mhm.
connecting that dot?
Yeah. So it came the childhood trauma, the repressed pieces of it came in, I'm going to say in dribs and drabs.
Yeah.
So it didn't hit me all at once, right? It was certain my subconscious unlocked certain pieces so that I could deal with them,
Yeah.
and then more would come in, right? Peeling back the onion. And
Yeah.
then you deal with it and then a little bit more comes in.
Yeah.
I will say that the last piece of information, hit me really, really hard. It just wasn't anything I ever expected.
Yeah.
And so the turning point for me was that information really put me into um, a little bit of a downward spiral medically, right? So I woke up with some vertigo. I had essentially I had a nervous breakdown.
Mhm.
And so I wasn't able to do my job. So we talked about I had to take a medical leave. That was really the turning point for me.
Yeah.
I feel like I had um gathered enough information about what I needed to know, and it was time to really deal with it. It was time to dig into it. I had also, I feel like my healing journey and my spiritual awakening kind of came in at the same time. And I think that happens for a lot of people because, to your point, like you have to, in order to get through everything, you have to believe in something else, right? Higher than yourself.
Mhm.
And through that process, I, collected or, uh, gathered my spiritual team. And that was pretty strong. And they were clearly telling me that I needed to take the time off, that I needed to really sit and be with the information. Because my normal process would have been just to kind of deal with it and be like, "Oh yeah, no, 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 I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine." And my team just knew that that wasn't gonna cut it this time. So they had to give me enough of a
Yeah.
medical issue so that I would stop and really pay attention, so that I could really work through it and do some, different types of therapies, different types of, programs so that I was able to deal with what I needed to deal with.
Wow, yeah. So I know it's now we can talk about and look back and say, a powerful journey, but that
Mhm.
the powerful journey and all the wisdom that you now have, and the healer that you are now, and how you impact other people's lives doesn't come with sunshines and rainbows and an easy life.
No.
We know that in order to
Mm.
have an extraordinary life will ask more from us, and it's
Yeah.
through pain and through challenges that we
Mhm.
really can embody the potential and the strength that we have within ourselves, and most
Yeah.
important, I think, is coming more to our authenticity, our
Mhm.
our
Yes.
core being. So that takes me to a question that I see a lot in other people's journey, and it happened to be also my same journey where I was in corporate, and when I started my healing journey, at some point, there was this realization that the corporate life was no longer something that I wanted to do. But in your
Mhm.
journey, how do you think your own like release of trauma, your own process, your own healing and transformation impacted your mindset and the way you started
Mm.
seeing life in a way that you came to that realization that you didn't want to be in corporate anymore?
Yeah. That's a great question.
Mhm.
So I recognized that there were patterns that I was repeating over and over and over again as part of my healing journey. And those patterns had a lot to do with a lack of boundaries,
Yeah.
being codependent
Yeah.
and a people pleaser,
Yeah.
and as an empath. And the more I understood how much of an empath I was, I recognized how much I was taking on from everybody else on a daily basis. So when I was on my medical leave, right, realizing all of these things, learning more about them, understanding how, to your point, how am I going to show up authentically in this job I've had for a really long time and already created a lot of bad habits and a lot of people pleasing.
Yeah.
How am I going to do that? How am I going to like right the ship? And so when I came back from the medical leave, it was during a super busy time. It was I was an HR for most of my career. And so we were going through our year-end process, which was always just a super busy time. And I just I just couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I did it because I had to.
Mm.
But I didn't I knew that I wasn't going to be able to put into place the boundaries that I needed, that I was gonna be able to correct the people pleasing, right? All of those things. Like there was just no way I was gonna do that in the job that I had. I had
Yeah.
already created, right? This environment.
Yeah.
And so, through a lot of conversations with my husband, and a lot of soul searching of what would I do next? That's when it was like, oh, Okay, of course. You're supposed to be an energy first. Like this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to
Yeah.
help people the same the same way that
Yeah.
you were helped. And so once that realization came in and, kind of dropped in from an intuitive standpoint, um, I gave my notice. I gave a 2-month notice and, wrote out what I needed to do with that corporate job and then started my energy healing business right after that. But we talk about this, healing journey or the spiritual journey. I'm still in it, right? Like I had a terrible day 2 days ago.
Yeah. Oh,
It's we're still I've learned enough about a lot of different things
yeah.
through my own process, like you said, that I'm able to help other people going through similar things and different things. Um, but yeah, I knew that I couldn't do that job anymore because
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to show up as authentically as
Mm.
I would want to. And really, the only way for me to do that was to leave and start my own business so I could just be Candice.
Yeah, you trusted that intuition, you trusted that it
I did.
all happened perfectly. And something powerful that came to me while you were sharing that part of your story is that the moment where when you ask the question, what am I gonna do next?
Mhm.
The answer came to you at the right time. I'm sure it was not like immediately, but then when it came,
Mm-mm.
you trusted it. So this is the power of asking the right questions to the universe,
Yeah.
to God, and to really trust that we
Mhm.
are gonna be guided. And most
Yes.
importantly, making the decision to going towards that path,
Mhm.
as you said, that's what your path of your most authentic path was. That was the path that was aligned with the new version of you. And
Yes.
yeah, it's so powerful for anyone who is listening to this part, and you are in the corporate life, which happens to be a lot of people at the moment
Mhm.
awakening and asking themselves, I don't feel that I fit into the corporate world anymore because of all the transformation I've gone through. What should I do next? Know
Yeah.
that that phase where I call it the vortex or the limbo,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
could be the limbo, is this gap between who you were and who you are becoming. And
Mhm.
that part is so uncomfortable because you are shedding and being so aware of the patterns, the mindset, the beliefs, the
Mhm.
behaviors that are no longer who you are now because of the transformation you are going through, like the people pleasing, the
Mhm.
abandonment, the self-doubt, the scarcity mindset, the
Mhm.
the rejecting yourself, the shutting down your intuition. Like we can keep going, right? These are
Yeah.
all trauma responses that when you start
Mhm.
healing, it will be natural that you will outgrow the places and the people who were
Yeah.
connected to those patterns and to that version of you. So
Mhm.
yeah, like I found it
Yeah.
so powerful, and thank you
Yeah.
so much as well for sharing that part of your journey. So what made you, because I think this is also like a challenging part, right? Like you asked the question, you received the intuition, you were like, okay,
Mhm.
I know I'm meant to be an energy healer. I am gonna hand over my resignation. Like,
Mhm.
take us through that process because I know it sounds easy, but I know it's not.
Yeah. No, it was not.
Yeah.
So I did really fully trust that intuition. I don't highly recommend blowing up your corporate life and just
Yeah.
and just leaving your job. That I wouldn't necessarily recommend that.
Yeah.
I happened to, my husband was working full time. We happened to be in a financial situation that we were able to do that. I recognize that that's not the true for everybody. And so I don't highly recommend blowing that up until you have a path forward. I did that, right? I had a lot of deep conversations with my husband. I did a lot of work ahead of leaving my corporate job to, create my company, build a website, right? Like do a lot of those steps kind of behind the scenes, so that I was ready to do something when I left the job, when I left the corporate job.
Mhm.
And that took a couple months, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
takes time and planning. This wasn't just oh, I'm going to quit my job on a Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of a lot of contemplation, a lot of deep conversation, and I had that support system, right? I had that support from my partner.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we were fortunate enough that, we were able to do that. And then quite honestly, the next 2 years, so this was 2021 that I left my corporate job and started the energy healing. And so the first 2 years were real deep for me in just healing myself.
Yeah.
So, working, getting my certifications, working with a lot of different people, but really just a lot of healing for me. And that's what I needed. I really needed to be able to step away from really the day-to-day responsibilities of having that really high pressure corporate job to
Yeah.
just spend the time, right? I had repressed all of this stuff for 40 something years. It
Yeah.
wasn't just going to, right itself, in the course of a couple of months. So I'm still on that journey, right? Way better today than I was 3 years ago. But still on that, healing and spiritual journey.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lifelong journey, and as you said, like you were sharing, 2 days ago, you had a terrible day.
Yeah.
I'm going through again, like I think I share with you my second spiritual awakening, if you want to put it that way,
Mhm.
where everything in my life is just going down, but I trust, and I
Yeah.
something that you said that I fully agree. Like, this journey is not about not having challenges and pain, or
Mm-mm.
we cannot bypass the human experience. Basically,
No.
what it gives us is the tools to navigate those
Yeah.
challenges with more compassion, self-love, and
Mhm. Mhm.
self-acceptance. So any other person going through the challenges we've been through, if they haven't done this work, it really gets to a point where they suffer because they are in
Yeah.
denial. They resist the very thing that's taking them
Mm.
to their own transformation and to the life that they desire. So we
Yeah. The resisting
desire
is
the
mhm.
resistance, exactly.
Yeah.
The resistance of it is what causes so much suffering. So radical
Mhm.
acceptance is something that Brené Brown talks a lot
Mm.
about it, and I
Mhm.
think it's one of my favorite. And
Yes.
really, like, it takes consciousness to really bring radical acceptance. One thing is us
Mhm.
talking about it, but another really different thing is when you are faced with one of the most challenging things in your life, and you are,
Mhm.
okay, let me go bring radical acceptance. No, it's an embodiment practice, like
Mhm.
really going into your body and really feeling the pain, and surrendering, and really saying, you know what, this is what I'm meant to go through to transform into, I don't
Mhm.
know who, but I trust,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we don't even know what is going to
We
happen
don't
on
know.
the other side. So yeah, I think
Yep.
that the other thing that came up for me, and I would love to know what you think about it as well, in like your own journey, what you mentioned about like the importance of having that time off the corporate because you needed solitude, you needed time to, you
Mhm.
needed to slow down. And this shows us how the corporate life, and a lot of the 9 to 5, or even, to be honest, it's not only about the corporate and 9 to 5, it's more about the mindset.
Mhm.
What I'm gonna say is how those type of jobs and environments keeps us in a dysregulated nervous system. So
Yes.
when we realize, and when our body starts slowing down, we are gonna repel anything that keeps our nervous system in a
Mhm.
dysregulated state, because we cannot heal when we are in survival.
Mm-mm.
Order for us to heal, we need to learn to slow down. So how was that process of learning to slow down and healing your nervous system and learning to sit comfortably in the discomfort? Because
Yeah.
it is not nice, it is not easy.
No.
Yeah.
So it started, I actually had taken a sabbatical. So I took 2 months off prior to the nervous breakdown. So it was my body was clearly prepping me for something, right? So
Mhm.
I had taken 2 months off, and in typical Candice fashion, I had a checklist of all the things I was going to do in this 2 months, right? We're gonna read this book, and we're gonna heal, and we're gonna do this, and la la la. And so I did make my way through the checklist, but that was kind of the precursor to, wow, there's a life outside of being at my job between, and quite honestly, towards the end, I was working a lot, right? So, 5 o'clock in the morning until, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. Holy cow, there's like a whole big world out here. I really got so pigeonholed and just so engulfed in my own, in my own work. And that was a product of my trauma, right? That was me not wanting to deal with anything. So I just kept piling on the work and taking everything from everybody else, right? That was a trauma response because I was in survival. But I got to a breaking point where I couldn't even function, right? There was no like I couldn't even put the grocery list together, right? Like I'm this super high functioning person, and my husband's like, "What are we getting for groceries?" I was like,
Yeah, you
I don't
figure
know.
out.
Yeah, you go to the store, whatever you get is going to be great. But yeah, there was, it was being comfortable in that precursor of taking the time off. I think we get into this hustle culture, right? This toxic productivity is part of this whole corporate culture. Everybody's so busy. And how are you today? "Oh, I'm so busy." And being able to take a step back from that and being like, wow, there's so much else out here that I wasn't, experiencing or enjoying because I was just so ingrained in what I was doing. Um, Being able to take that step back and take that time off showed me a lot of what I was missing and that I needed to incorporate a lot more of that into the day to day. And then, of course, right when I go back to work, um, it only lasted a few weeks from the time I went back from the sabbatical to the nervous breakdown. So,
Yeah,
my body clearly wasn't ready to go back to work.
yeah,
And that was you talked about the nervous system. That medical leave that I took, most of the work that I did was about regulating my nervous system
yeah,
out of survival, which I didn't even know was a thing, right? Like I was
yeah,
so unconscious to all of this.
yeah,
Um, my whole life, really. I just did what I was supposed to do, right? I went to school, I got married. We unfortunately weren't able to have children, and that probably started a little bit of that spiral of the workaholism
yeah,
because I didn't have kids, and so everybody was like, "Oh, Candace can do it. Oh, Candace will do it. Oh, she'll do the travel. She'll do this," right?
yeah.
Because she didn't have anything else. I didn't have anything else.
Mhm.
Um, when in reality, I needed to find some other things to do besides just work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wow, yeah. And something that you mentioned that really like stood for me was how the this mindset and this life of constant chasing and constant doing and constant being in that rat race of the external achievement and the toxic positivity or toxic
Mhm.
productivity, both toxic
Yep.
productivity is masking that the dysfunction within ourselves.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
for me it was so evident when I started healing how my productivity, quote unquote, for the ones listening, was really masking my anxiety. And I didn't, for
Mhm.
me, I will never have thought I had anxiety. I was like, no,
No.
I'm not an anxious person.
No,
But
me either.
because we don't even give time to the body to rest, to feel the anxiety because we are
That's
in
right.
constant doing. And
Yeah.
that's when we feel the void. That's when we feel disconnected.
Mhm.
And we go towards the unhealthy coping mechanisms like workaholism or drug
Yes.
abuse or alcohol
Mhm.
or porn or
Yep.
shopaholic. Like there's so many different
Mhm.
unhealthy coping mechanisms that people go towards to deal with the inner discomfort, which at the end is repressing the trauma and reinforcing
Yes.
that disconnection. So this is why, tell me like what you think about your own journey, that when you started healing those patterns within yourself, you no longer
Mhm.
connected with the corporate job because the corporate
Yeah.
job was a way for you to deal and cope with that very
Yes.
dysfunction. But once the dysfunction was not there anymore because you healed it, then
Mhm.
you were not connected to that place anymore because you outgrew your
Yeah.
own life in the corporate world.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the job didn't resonate with me. I just couldn't show up as the same person, to your point, because I wasn't the same person.
Yeah,
Um, and a lot of, and you probably deal with this too, a lot of even just if you're at the like the tippy top, the beginning of your process, just being aware of some of your patterns
yeah,
or some of your behaviors, um, when I look back now, I can see it, and I wish, I don't know if I would have listened, but I wish that someone would have like taken a step back with me and been like, "Why are you doing this?
yeah,
What exactly are you trying to accomplish?" Right? Like I wish somebody had seen some of that in me and just took a minute to be like, "Is this really how you want to do this?"
mhm,
Again, I don't know if I would have listened or not, but
mhm.
that's part of, what we're doing now is we're allowing people to recognize, right, some of these patterns, some
Yeah,
of the way that they show up. I know a lot of conversations that I have with people, with my clients, even just today I was chatting with someone and we were talking about how, relationships are difficult,
yeah,
quote unquote, for those listening. Relationships are difficult. Well, are they difficult? They don't have to be difficult. They can be. They don't all have to be.
yes,
But where did you learn that?
yeah,
Right? And then again, when you're not really aware of what's going on or how you're showing up in your life, you don't recognize that you're taking things in from your family, right? So, really, the first relationships that we see are within our family unit. And so, if those relationships are difficult for you, then all relationships are going to look difficult,
yeah,
right? Because that's how you know how to show up. But when you take a step back from that, it's like, well, do they really? They don't really need to be that difficult.
yeah, yeah. And that's a big realization that, we also coming to terms when we start our healing journey, that a lot of our own beliefs and behaviors
Mm-hmm.
and ways of living come from not only from our parents, which they are carrying their own trauma, but also
Yes.
from society and the conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
So is
Yes.
allowing yourself to really ask, like as I said, what Candice did, ask yourself the powerful questions to get to really know who you are
Yeah.
outside
Get
of.
curious.
Get curious, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to know the answer straight away. In fact, as you've seen with what Candice have shared, the answer will come to you. It will be
Mm-hmm.
so evident that you will have so much clarity. But
Mm-hmm.
asking yourself the questions and starting to adopt your own beliefs and questioning the things that you've been taught and the things that are not in alignment with who you really are, that's a
Yeah.
massive part of the journey, right? Like
Mm.
bringing that
Yes.
self-identity and concept of
Mm-hmm.
self in alignment with who you truly are. And the last part I wanted to mention, in like regarding corporate, which because I resonate with that journey so much,
Mm-hmm.
actually most of my clients, I take them through that journey, like they are in corporate and
Mm-hmm.
going towards doing their own purpose of not really knowing yet what to do, but they are already sitting in that the limbo.
Yeah.
One massive realization I had in my own journey is that the moment when I started bringing the safety and security to like within myself, the only place that can really be cultivated and can really feel enough, that was the moment that the corporate life no longer resonated, because
Mm-hmm.
the system keeps you in that false reality that that's your security, that a
Yes.
monthly salary is your security, that having a job where you can go is your security. But that's
Mm-hmm.
so far from the truth. And this is
Yeah.
why the more we stay in those environments, the more we disconnect from ourselves, because we are basing our security.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that it's wrong to be in corporate. What is
No.
wrong is if you are basing your security
Mm-hmm.
on a job or on a monthly salary.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, yes, and the validation was a big piece for me too, right? I looked for validation outside of myself all day long because
Yeah.
I didn't know who I was. And so if you're not looking for that validation, then kudos to you.
Yes.
But if you're, I fell into the people pleasing because, let's face it, at a corporate job, we all get reviews, right?
Mm.
And who are our superiors looking to? We all have clients in some way, shape, or form. Mine happened to be internally. And so my internal clients were providing their perspectives on me and how I did my job,
Yeah.
right? So if I didn't give them what they wanted or show up the way that they needed me to, then they weren't going to give me a good review, right?
Yeah.
So it's a big, big hamster wheel and a
Oh,
big a big ugly circle. And I
yeah.
worked in HR for 20 something years, so I get the
Uh,
whole get the whole process.
yeah. Yeah, it's so powerful, Candice, thank you for bringing that because the validation piece is so powerful.
Mhm,
It's basically we're connecting all the dots on how the corporate, like how the system makes us believe that our validation, our security, our sense of
yeah.
self, our,
Mhm,
whatever you call it, your achievements in life come from the
mhm,
external. When it's, oh my God,
yeah.
when you start really doing the inner work, you will
Mhm,
realize that there's no fulfillment that I've ever felt in with that sense of peace than doing the
mhm,
inner work, than
yeah.
coming into alignment with who I really am. So
Mhm,
talking about patterns because it's a big part of my coaching and the work that I do, and on
mhm.
my because of my own story as well. What role do you think it play recognizing your patterns like codependency or lack of boundaries and people pleasing play in your healing process?
So the beginning part again was just the awareness that those things were happening. And then when I started to I had to do the deep dive. I had to read the books, right? I had to read the Brene Browns. I had to read to understand it a little bit more and then put those pieces together. Okay, so I'm an empath. I am feeling everybody's feelings all of the time. So that means that now that I'm aware of that, now I get to protect my energy and clear my energy, right, from other people so that not everybody this is my job, right? It's not everybody else's job to be like, "Oh, Candace
Yeah.
Candace is absorbing my energy. I need to something different." No, that's my job, right?
Yes.
That's my job to protect my energy and to be able to show up in a room of people and not take everything on.
Yeah.
And then the boundary piece, because I'm feeling, right, I can feel your disdain when I say, "No, you can't do this," or "No, I don't wanna do this." That leads to the lack of boundaries and the people pleasing. So it was just they were 2 more levels of I'm gonna start creating these boundaries with myself. I'm gonna start, kind of that reparenting, right? I'm going to actually hold a boundary with myself and, make sure that I stop working at a certain time so that I can have dinner with my husband, or be able to go for a walk after dinner, right? So starting to have some of those self boundaries allowed me to then have boundaries with other people, right?
Yeah.
So it was a very step-by-step process for me once I realized what was happening. It didn't all happen overnight, but once I started to employ some boundaries, which not everybody likes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you've not done that before. I
Yeah.
have a friend who's like, "I'd like to be able to send out a memo to be like, I am now creating some boundaries." Uh,
Yeah, yeah. That would
we don't know.
make it easier, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't always get that, and so we just have to work with what we have. But it was step by step. It was like realizing, the empath information. It was realizing that because I didn't have any boundaries, I was people pleasing. Yeah, sure, I'll do this for you. I'll go here, I'll do that. When in reality, I didn't want to do any of it, but I didn't know how to say no
Yes.
because I felt like that wasn't the acceptable answer.
Yeah.
And so I've learned how to say no. I say no a lot.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be rude and it doesn't have to be mean. And I've learned, right, how to be like, you know what, that doesn't feel good for me today. Can we talk about doing that maybe next week?
Mm,
And I've also changed a lot of the people, right, in
mm,
my life. And so the people that are in my life understand the process that I'm going through. They're most likely going through their own process.
mm.
And so they understand when I say no, it's not because I don't like them or, I'm upset with them. It's because I just need a little bit more downtime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so going through, yeah, just kind of step by step, um, peeling away, right, some of the patterns, with understanding or the awareness of those those different things.
Yeah. And I think like you mentioned a powerful part there, which is the moment you start implementing that with yourself first, like have
Yes.
boundaries with yourself and coming back into your energy, your own
Mm-hmm.
self, your own worth, your own
Yeah.
concept of self, then
Mm-hmm.
codependency and enmeshment and lack of boundaries will start to heal and be transcended, because that's something that you are now changing within yourself. So it all starts
Mm-hmm.
with us, like with everything.
Yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and two questions before we close. The first one is, what do you think is what's the difference between doing energy healing for trauma
Mm-hmm.
release, which energy healing is like something like part of the practice that are very much growing and growing nowadays, more than talking therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you like? I know in your own journey, I don't know if you follow any other practices as a client, but what do you think it has impacted in positive ways your life to do energy healing for trauma release?
So, because all of my stuff is repressed, it's hard for me to show up at a therapist and say, when I was 5, this happened and this is how it made me feel, right? I don't have the ability to do that because I don't remember it.
Yeah.
So, for me, the subconscious work has been key because A, I don't have to remember it because my subconscious just brings it to the forefront.
Mhm.
And the energy healing work that I'm doing, we can talk about it if you need to, but you don't have to talk about it. I feel like when you've had that trauma piece,
Yeah.
um, that the talk therapy can sometimes be more, what do I want to say? More of an issue, right? For you, like reliving it isn't always helpful.
Yeah.
And so being able to just, okay, recognize this is it, this is what it is. This is where it's being held in the body. These are the emotions. This was the programming. Let's just release the energy from the body. The body's ready for it.
Yeah.
And then you can move on, right? You learn, your lessons and your patterns from a lot of that energy work. I did do some other different types of therapies. Obviously, I've done Reiki. Um, Internal family systems, I would say, was probably one of the more helpful pieces of therapy that I did. So understanding, right, that parts work,
Yes.
the inner critic and the judge and right. And going back and doing that inner child work,
Yeah.
that was a real key piece for me. So I bring that into my energy work now, right? Because I've learned how to do that for
Yeah.
myself. And so I bring my clients through a lot of that. Not I'm not internal family system certified,
Yeah.
but I'm able to do, different inner child work.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say it's so powerful. I thought you were gonna mention something at the end, but yeah, it is so powerful when you can be, the embodiment of the work that you do. This is why, like,
Mhm,
us going through our own experience first, there's nothing more powerful than that, because not only we are serving others from a place of embodiment and truth, but
mhm,
also, and I think most importantly, we know how to hold them in their own pain because we have been there. We
yeah,
understand their pain points, not from a mental level, but from a body
mhm,
level. We have
mhm,
felt, of course, every pain is different, every journey is different, but we can have a better understanding when we have been through something so similar. This is why this kind of work and going through our own transformation, it is part in most of the times is part of our purpose. And I always say to
yeah,
my client, and this is something that came to me like once, that our wounds are connected to our purpose. The moment we start healing our
mhm,
deepest wounds, there's a higher
mhm,
purpose of why we go through the things we go through. Yes, it was
yes,
painful. Yes, you didn't deserve it. Yes, it was challenging, but now we're adults and there's no one who will come and save you. So it's up
mm-mm,
to us. And I've seen it in my own journey. Your own journey, Candice, of,
mhm,
healing your own trauma, going through all these different body code.
mhm.
I think is mind code as well,
Belief code.
belief
Mhm,
code. and Reiki and, internal family
Mhm.
system that gave you the knowledge and the wisdom to then you come up with your own practice.
Yeah.
And it became your purpose. So yeah,
Yeah.
basically the message here is don't run away from your pain and from your wounds and from your
Mhm.
childhood, because with your purpose and your highest good, your highest life lies in healing those traumas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And just to finish, what advice would you give to someone who suspects they have repressed trauma, but hasn't yet connected with it? How can they start that journey of, okay, let me see what's in the subconscious, like as you said?
Yeah. So a lot of it is about getting curious. So, start asking yourself some questions. I did a lot of outside gathering. I did a lot of information gathering before I came back in, right? I had an astrology reading, I had a tarot card reading. I had a lot of other, information that I really just kind of sat with and started to digest, right? Read some books on trauma if you think that you might have some trauma. Podcasts, right? Understanding, that's how I started learning how I was an empath. There was there, and she still does it, just a beautiful podcast around being an empath and what that means and how it shows up in your body and your relationships, and really just start getting curious. And then if I if I'm going to be 100% honest, start working with people who are intuitive.
Yeah.
So, any therapist, any energy healer, anybody that you're going to work with, for me, they have to be intuitive, because it's key for me for people to be able to have that connection to the other side, or whatever you want to call it, but to have that kind of innate knowing, however they're intuiting things through the clairs. But for someone to work with someone who doesn't have that now, just doesn't work for me. So, having other people have that, intuitive ability is huge.
Yeah.
uh in community, right? I started with community, just building a different group of people, like mindset, just getting curious, doing energy healing. You might love it, you might hate it, right? But try a lot of different things with people that you trust, or people that are recommended, right? Word of mouth is huge.
Yeah.
Any of those things.
Yeah, and yeah, so powerful. And just as you said, like following your own, inner compass and what you feel drawn
Yeah.
to, and trusting that intuition, because part of the healing journey is
Hmm.
really trusting your own discernment and your own decisions,
Yeah,
regardless of what happens. So
that's right.
thank you so much, Candice, for sharing your story, your wisdom with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you. I love our conversation. So how can people contact you?
Sure. Well, thank you very much. This has been a beautiful conversation. I've enjoyed it very much. People can contact me. My company, my business name is Indiglow Soul. So indiglowsoul.com, Candice at indiglowsoul.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and I also co-host a podcast called Healers with Humor, that you can look up. We're fairly new. We just started in the last few months, so there's a couple episodes out that you can listen to. But yeah, anywhere, any of those places, happy to just chat. I have a free consultation that you can do if you're just interested in, learning more about energy healing, or, my process, or anything like that.
Beautiful. I will put all your details in the description of the podcast and also on YouTube, so people can contact you.
Thank you.
Please, if you feel drawn to Candice, trust your intuition. Her work is amazing. I personally went through a session with her, and everything that came up was like really powerful. So yeah, it was
Thank you.
very interesting, and I love that session with you. So thank you so much again. And before we close, what will be your key takeaways that you would like people to go with?
Key takeaways. Um, Start slowing down just a little bit every day to give your body a chance to talk to you. Listen to that inner guidance. Even if it's just 1 minute or 2 minutes, just start building that practice of listening to your body.
Yeah, beautiful. So powerful. Yeah, and trust the journey.
Hmm.
You are already being supported. It's all happening in divine time. And yeah,
Yeah.
If you have any further questions, you can contact Candice or myself. We love, all things energy healing, trauma, inner transformation in our own, our own story, and how that journey led us to the work that we do with other people. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you soon in another episode of the Awakened Woman podcast.